The hour of 6:30 having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment for the City of Keene. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and the city website. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the city meeting email list. The public and other members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, please make all remarks through the chair. Anyone who wishes to address the board is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. As a reminder, the minute takers participating remotely this evening, board members, please be sure to turn on your microphone when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask that you speak louder or turn your microphone on. Now, we have a full agenda tonight, so we'll try to move it along. But we'll start with introducing the board members. My name is Joe Hoppick, and I'm the chair. And to my left,
Jane Taylor.
Ed Guyot.
Richard Clough.
David Weigel.
thank you all very much. The minutes from the last meeting of March 4th. Anybody have any comments about those? Seeing none. Is there a motion to approve them?
Oh.
Yes.
I move we approve the minutes from our March 4th meeting, I believe it was.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. If there's no objection, we'll skip over the unfinished business for the moment, because by the time we're done with the next 5 hearings, that business will still be unfinished. And these other folks won't have to wait around. So it is my understanding, and Mr. Hagan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Z.B.A.'s 2024-06, 07, 08, 09, and 10 have asked to be moved to the next regular meeting?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I would at this point entertain a motion to continue those specific Z.B.A. cases till our next regular meeting, per the request of the applicant. Mr. Clough?
So moved. Mr.
So-
Chair, if I may,
Yep.
we just want to open them
Yep.
and then make a motion to.
So let's do it this way to save time. Let's open 24-24-06, 2024-07, 2024-08, 2024-09, and 2024-10 for purposes of Mr. Clough's motion. And it was seconded, right? Is there any discussion, discussion on that? Yes. Attorney
Yeah,
Taylor.
could you just add to your motion the address and tax number? I believe the address and the tax map number is the same for all of them.
All right, well, the minutes will reflect that the address is 6586, I'm not going to have, Hypoluxo Road, Suite 350, Lake Worth, Florida? No?
21.
Oh, 21, oh, G2 Holdings, 25 North Street in Jaffrey, okay, wrong address. And the tax maps are all the same, 218-008-000. Correct? And the property address is 21 Route 9 in Keene. And that's with respect to the ones we just named. And that'll be reflected in the minutes, in the motion too. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. So those matters will be carried over to next meeting. And that business.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, did you state the date?
I don't
of the
know.
next meeting?
Do I have the date of the next meeting handy?
It is Monday, May 6th.
That's the date then. Okay, thank you, Corinne. All right, having dealt with that piece of business, our first item on the agenda is Z.B.A. 2024-02. And Mr. Hagan, do you want to give us a briefing on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This property is located at 19 Grove Street. It's zoned residential preservation. It sits on .23 acres. Current uses are office, storage, and 2 residential units. The office space is about 1,248 square feet. Storage area is 3,917 square feet. And the 2 residential units are 1,248 square feet, totaling 6,423 square feet of habitable area, or habitable and storage area. There was a variance from April 15th in 75, Z.B.A. 7519, to convert the small grocery store into office space for the coal and oil company offices.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions of Mr. Hagan about that history?
Yep.
Oh, Attorney Taylor, yes.
Yeah, could we have the map? Not that I can see, maybe I can see it. The building as it exists, I take it, because it doesn't meet any of the setbacks, it's pre-existing non-conforming?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll read the case into the record. Petitioner Thomas Hanna of BCM Environmental Land Law PLLC Keene requests a variance for property located at 19 Grove Street, tax map 585-055-000 in the Residential Preservation District, which is owned by 1925 Grove Street LLC, 295 Seaver Road, Harrisville, New Hampshire. The petitioner requests a variance to permit the conversion of a legally nonconforming office use to a third apartment unit in the Residential Preservation District per Article 3.2.5 of the zoning regulations. Mr. Hanna,
Thank you.
you have the floor.
Have to press anything? No.
Just the ejection button under the seat.
You can reserve that.
Okay.
My name is Tom Hanna, and as the chair said, I'm a lawyer at BCM Environmental and Land Law. We have offices in Keene and Norwich, Vermont, and Concord, and I'm in the Keene office. I represent 1925 Grove Street LLC, the principal of which is Nancy Shabbat, who's here with me in the audience. She's the widow of Tom Shabbat. You'll hear me mention him and other Shabbat family members. The Shabbat family moved from Canada to Keene in the late 1800s, and they purchased the 19 Grove Street property in 1892. When I say they, it was Eli Shabbat. Eli sold groceries from 19 Grove Street as early as 1896. We know that from an advertisement that we found, or Tara Kessler in my office found, in the Keene Evening Sentinel dated March 16, 1896, noticed the firm of Gerard and Shabbat Grocers, 19 Grove Street, Keene, has been dissolved. Mr. Gerard returning to Manchester and Mr. Shabbat continuing the business. All persons owing bills to the late firm are requested to call at once and settle the same. I had to read that. It was such a great line. Eli Shabbat continued to run the grocery store from the first floor of 19 Grove Street for more than half a century. At some point, he added coal to his inventory, store inventory, and a loading dock was added along with the barn. and from the loading dock, bags of coal were distributed. In the early 1970s, Eli's sons, Tom and Ted, purchased the property and turned the first floor into the office of Shabbat Coal and Oil. I'm curious, I just was curious what that date was that you said, and there was a variance in April 15, 1975, that must have related to that. At the same time, in the early 70s, or possibly as late as 1975, they converted the attic on the third floor, finished attic, to an apartment, so that there were then the Shabbat Coal and Oil office on the first floor and 2 one-room apartments on the second and third floors, and those continue to this day. In 2016, just recent years, Shabbat Coal and Oil sold the business to Schiadelli, and Schiadelli Oil stayed in those offices for another, I think, 3 years until 2009, fall of 2019, before moving to other quarters in Keene, I believe. From the fall of 2019 to the fall of 2023, the first floor was rented to a chiropractor. And then that tenancy ended in October of 2023, and Nancy Shabbat got together with Josh Greenwald of Greenwald Realty in an effort to find an office tenant. And one of the 2 documents that I sent over here on Friday, I believe, by email, one is the colored map that I'll refer to later, and the other is a letter from Josh Greenwald, dated March 28, an email to me, actually, concerning his unsuccessful efforts to find an office tenant. As he indicated, he had 0 inquiries. As Nancy Shabbat told me, he did bring to her a vaping business as a prospective tenant, and she made the decision that that was not a good fit for either for her upstairs residential tenants or, in her view, the neighborhood. And right about that time, which would have been in early March this year, or would have been probably in February at some point, she decided that, or she inquired whether she could have an apartment and learned she needed a variance for that and retained our firm. So we're seeking a variance, as Mike indicated earlier, to convert the first floor from a legally non-conforming office to an apartment. Interestingly, as the board may know, I think I have my dates right. It wasn't until 2021, when the land use code was adopted, there was a provision in the ordinance that allowed for the conversion of a legally non-conforming use to another non-conforming use without the need for a variance. I didn't go back and look at it because it's past tense, but I believe it was in the nature of a special exception. But that option wasn't available to us, so we are proceeding with the variance. It's a variance from section 3.2.5. So I'll address the variance criteria. First one being granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. We believe that the proposed apartment would be less impactful than the office use. That's especially from a traffic point of view. And Tara Kessler has provided you with an analysis that she obtained by reviewing the Bible of Traffic Consulting, which is the ITE Trip Generation Manual. And to boil it down, the combination of the 3 apartments as opposed to the office use and the 2 apartments would reduce the traffic by approximately 1/2 based on the standard traffic generation manual. In addition to that, it'll reduce the parking demand as that demand is set forth in your zoning ordinance. Under the zoning ordinance, currently 9 parking spaces are required. That's 5 spaces for the office based on the square footage, and then 2 spaces for each of the apartments. There are only 5 spaces available, and so the conversion would technically require 6 spaces, but I say technically, I'll go on to an even more technicality, which is a quirky provision of the ordinance, but either way, the 5 spaces will be maintained, and there will be a reduced need or reduced demand based on the change of use of the first floor. So there is a provision, section 9.2.8, and I think I'm going to give you a conclusion to that because it's a very quirky provision. But what it does is give credit for the deficiencies in current parking requirements. And so if the existing deficiency is -4, and that's because 9 were required and 5 exist, then if you apply that deficiency to the required 6 on-site spaces for the proposed 3 dwelling units, then the on-site parking requirement for the proposed multifamily use would be 2 parking spaces. Seems absurd. I think it is absurd, but it doesn't really matter because the 5 parking spaces that exist will continue to exist and be applied or used for the multifamily house. Only reason I raise that is that there's a good argument under the ordinance that the conversion will bring the property into compliance with the parking requirement. In any case, it's a much better situation. If the variance is granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. That's the second criterion. So I list several different reasons why I think this is the case. The spirit, I would say, relates to the downgrading of the residential intensity from the spirit of the residential preservation district. It relates to the going from multifamily to single family, and the conversion that we propose of the first floor, as I indicated earlier, will reduce the traffic impact by about 1/2, making it more compatible with a residential use. And as I mentioned also, the parking demand will be reduced. And it's residential use instead of office use in a residential zone. So more compatible than an office use. So if you add the third apartment, you end up eliminating two nonconformities under the zoning ordinance. One nonconformity is the office use, and the other nonconformity is the provision under the ordinance that prohibits mixed uses from residential districts. So this would no longer be a mixed use, and it would no longer be the nonconforming office. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because a lot of these are overlapping arguments, but I suggest that the applicant will suffer harm by being compelled to retain the office space, which in all likelihood means it's going to remain empty. Or she's going to have an office use that just may not be suitable. At this point, I've told you, and so has Josh Greenwald, in the 5 or 6 months that he's actively marketed the properties, he said 0 interest. Nancy's been unable to find a commercial tenant, a compatible one, and as Josh has indicated, there's been 0 interest. Conversely, the public does not gain from prohibiting this variance, whether the space stays as an office or is empty. Moreover, the public gains by having another housing opportunity. Clearly, that's a benefit that is of great need these days. The fourth criterion, if the variance were granted, the values surrounding the properties would not be diminished. Again, I pointed to the, I'll point to that colored plan that I submitted Friday afternoon that shows I think it's entitled the surrounding land uses, or the land uses surrounding 19 Grove Street. You'd be hard put, I think, to say that converting this apartment would diminish the value of the properties around, when about 20 of the properties in the general neighborhood and 14, I think, on Grove Street are already 2-family or 3-family or 4-family. Moreover, Grove Street is not what I would call a single-family residential street, or an appropriate one. It's pretty high traffic, like all of those streets, higher speed than is preferred, and most of the houses are pretty close to the road, so it's clear to me that the value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished by making this mixed-use building a 3-unit. I already indicated that it would reduce traffic and that the historic pattern of this entire neighborhood has been 2 and multifamily. Now, the unnecessary hardship, I'm going to spend a little more time with that one. The initial standard is owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship. I'll get to the rest of it at some point soon. So the special conditions, it's a 3-story building. A lot of those buildings in this area are not 3 stories. I guess technically it may be 2.5. I'm not an architect, but it's got 3 floors, 3 levels. It's got an unusual history going back 130 years as one of the earliest, if not the earliest, grocery store in Keene. Then it became Shabbat Coal and Oil business with related activities that included, when it became the coal and oil business, it had a barn and I think actually Eli may have added the loading dock before it became the office. And it also had, when it was coal and oil business, it added a large overhead or commercial garage where trucks were stored. So it is a very large building with, as Mike went through the square footage, and almost all of the property is covered by the building. Now obviously there's space for some cars in the front. There's a strip of grass along the north side, but there is no place for a yard or, especially if it were single family, it just wouldn't find a place. You can see the property goes all the way back to the rear. The long history of mixed uses since the 1890s, I think, is a special condition. The building footprint that I just mentioned covers more than 60% of the lot. The footprint is unusually large compared even to the other multifamily houses in the neighborhood. And there's limited parking on this property, which is not necessarily the same condition that afflicts the neighborhood. A lot of those properties seem to have parking. And these are special conditions that distinguish 19 Grove Street from the other properties in the area. It would be an extreme hardship and unreasonable at that to require or force the 19 Grove Street building to transition to a single-family residence. It's not going to happen in this neighborhood. It's not going to happen, particularly with this house, and it's not going to happen in this neighborhood. And that's because of the building size, the lack of any land, the cost of conversion, and that would apply to all of the properties in the area. And then I mentioned also that a special situation, I think, is Grove Street itself, which is a higher trafficked street than most. And for all of these reasons, I think there's no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes of the single-family zoning ordinance that's was adopted in 2017 and the specific application of the provision to the property. To the extent that the goal in 2017, when the ordinance was adopted to convert this whole area to single-family residential, the goal is flawed. And it's flawed for a number of reasons, but it's a goal that's not going to be attained, in my professional opinion. And I know Tara Kessler agrees with me on that as a planner. And I believe that the goal was developed to protect the neighborhood from college housing. And this is a large neighborhood, not just 19 Grove Street. But and that goal was developed a little bit prior to 2017 as people became aggravated, Med Kopczynski being one of them, with college housing. And at the time, Keene State College's enrollment was approximately 4,500 students. Enrollment has gone down annually since 2017, and is now, and it was 2,872 in 2023. Went down a little bit more in the fall of 2023 to 2,863, and it went down even further in this particular semester, which is 2,733. So maybe 1,500 plus reduction in enrollment. And then as indicated above and as shown on the map, land uses surrounding 19 Grove Street, about 20 of the properties, you can count them, in the Grove Street neighborhood are two-family and multifamily, and have been that way historically. Grove Street itself is not conducive to single-family residences. And the principle, I want to just address the principle enunciated in the Simplex Technology case, 2001 case, one of the standard milestone cases in zoning law, which sets forth the proposition that zoning ordinances must reflect the current character of the neighborhood. And that's a case at 145 New Hampshire, page 727. And there's another case, earlier case, Belanger versus Nashua, that had the same kind of holding that the character of the neighborhood had to be maintained with a new ordinance. The residential preservation district is and always will be inconsistent with the 19 Grove Street neighborhood, with the character of that neighborhood. Now, I want to emphasize that neither Simplex nor Belanger were overruled. They did form the genesis of a revised statute in 2008, I think it was, or 2007. And then in 2008, I have to acknowledge that there was a case which stated that the current character of a neighborhood does not necessarily preclude a town from enacting an ordinance targeted at altering the neighborhood's character. And then this is the key language in my view, when a sufficient basis exists to do so. So while Simplex was not overruled, it was distinguished by 9A, a Chesterfield case on Spofford Lake. And in 9A, so I guess the question that I will put to you is, what is the sufficient basis for altering the character of a neighborhood with a zoning ordinance? And in 9A, it was the preservation of Spofford Lake. Yes, the proposed development that required a variance was consistent with the neighborhood of next to Spofford Lake. And in that case, it would, and under Simplex, since it was consistent with the character of the neighborhood, the variance should have been granted. But the court said in 9A that the preservation of a jewel and an incredible natural resource, such as Spofford Lake, is a sufficient basis to target an area and change it, notwithstanding its character. That need to preserve a natural resource outweighed the character of a neighborhood the fact that a character of a neighborhood should control a zoning ordinance. However, that's just not the case in this situation, and I hope very much you'll agree with me. I don't know how you cannot. This was not a unique resource, an environmental concern. As you know, Spofford Lake, for a substantial part of Chesterfield, is a critical resource, a major tax resource, but also a major recreational benefit to the community. And it provided a sufficient basis for a zoning ordinance that addressed that Spofford Lake and attempted to preserve it. Here we have an effort to address college housing, and it was, I suggest, over the top in trying to dictate that a neighborhood that has been multifamily for decades and decades, 100 years, multifamily on a fast-paced bypass type of highway, Marlboro to Community Way, Marlboro to Water Street, houses close to the idea of converting those houses to single family to address college housing was not a sufficient justification that takes you out of the simplex standard that says zoning ordinances must conform to the character of a neighborhood. I don't have anything more on the main hardship criteria, and I didn't address in writing the last provision, which I guess is B or something in the hardship, but I'll just put it in front of you in case it provides you with a justification for granting this variance. I don't think you need this. What it says is, in B, set forth in your ordinance, if the criteria in subparagraph A are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot reasonably be used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to enable a reasonable use of it. The reasonable use is that, for all the reasons I've indicated, this house in particular is not readily convertible to a single-family house, given its characteristics. And I recounted, won't do it again, but I recounted the special conditions that exist with this property, and I think those special conditions distinguish it from the characteristics of the area. So that would be a basis on which you could grant the variance. Again, I think that we've made our case in the overall first part. I'm done. If you have any questions, I'm glad to give it a stab.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Any questions from any of the members? Attorney Taylor.
Thank you. I have some questions on the parking.
Yes.
One of the pictures here in the packet, in its key, shows
Page 42.
page 40 of 147. Shows driveways on both sides of, in front of and on both sides of the building. But then the pictures that were submitted, see if I can find a page number for that. Well, I guess it would be page 41 of 147, shows that grassy area you described. So I'm a little confused as to where the actual 5 parking spaces are.
Okay, so the, first of all, that driveway on the right side of the house, for some reason I didn't bring my photographs, I'm sorry. But the driveway on the right side of the 19 Grove Street does not belong to 19 Grove Street.
Okay,
It's,
okay.
oh, thank you very much, Mike. So, and then the 4 parking spaces are 3 in front of the building, with the rear of the car normally facing Grove Street. And then there are 2 spaces, so you can see on the black car, I'm looking at the page 41 lower photograph, Jane.
Yep,
The black car is in the second of 2 spaces that are on the side, the south side of the building. You see the one in front of it. And then the 3 spaces are in front of the building, one right behind that black car, one just to the right of it, and then a handicap space to the right of that, which is wider.
is the handicap space on that parcel?
To the right of the striped section
okay.
in front of the main door.
Okay, I thought that was one of the 3 that you said was in front.
That is one of the 3.
Okay.
That's a handicap
Okay,
space.
so that's inclusive, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was because when it was an office space,
Right.
needed I don't think it would be required as an apartment.
It's up to, that's out of our jurisdiction, let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's a space, and that's what I was including.
Okay, the other question I had on the parking is that I found a little confusing was at the end of criteria 1. You talked about parking on 25 rear Grove Street.
Right.
And, you know, I guess what I'm concerned about is, first of all, I'm not sure it's truly accessory because it's on a different parcel. But besides that, what if at some stage that parcel is not in common ownership and that
Right.
parking can't be used?
Right, exactly.
Pardon?
That's exactly correct.
Oh, okay.
If that back lot is sold, since it's a separate lot, then it can't be used for 19 Grove Street. But 19 Grove Street had 9 parking spaces that were required. It always only had 5.
Okay,
And now it'll reduce the number of required spaces from 9 by 4. I'm sorry, from 9 to 6,
right.
2, 2, and 2. And it'll still have the 5 parking spaces.
Okay, now, that's much clearer, thank you. And I guess the last question I had was just, again, trying to understand the building. You said at one stage that there was the storage area, there were trucks in there, and the loading dock. Can you just sort of describe where on this picture, or those would be located, had been located?
Which picture? Or any of the pictures?
Any of the pictures, none of them really show well, I guess maybe the one of the adjacent parking area shows a little bit of the back of the building, but I wasn't really sure where those were.
Mike, did you take those photographs back? They are, they should be.
I think,
Oh, they're on the other side, okay, sorry. Yeah, so if you look at the page 42, on the lower photograph on the right, that entire building on the right is barn and garage and is behind the living area, substantially behind the living area of the house.
So is the plan to convert that into the
No,
apartment? That's
no.
just gonna stay as is?
That's gonna stay as a barn and, just not gonna change at all. The only part that's being converted is the office space, which will be converted to 2 bedrooms, the front, and you can see if you look at page 41, the front of the building on the first floor has 2, I guess you'd call them bay windows that face out on Grove Street. Behind the one on the right would be a kitchen area. And then, moving to your left to the south, is a living room. It's a combined kitchen, living room, dining room. And then on the north side, behind the kitchen, are actually 2 bathrooms. One is a small, I forget what you call it, bathrooms. It's not a full bathroom, just it's not,
Half-bath.
it just is a place where you can go to the bathroom. And then there's a full bathroom. And then there's another very small room on that side too, which would be converted into a laundry room. So it'd be 2 bedrooms and a large living, dining, and kitchen area, which would have to be installed.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can I ask?
Certainly, certainly.
Question for you on the parking. I tried to make sense, and I know certainly Attorney Hannah tried to explain it to us, but is it okay under that provision to have 5 spaces? Is that how it really works?
There are some, not only under that provision, but under another as well. It would require a letter and a signature and some other, I could go through the list with you, but yes, they have options for it, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure there were adequate options.
Under 3, I pulled it up for you. Let me get the 2 sections. So it'd be, there's also the allowable for administrative reduction request procedure, and it outlines what the criteria is if they wanted to request that, to have 2 for each, but they would fall under the other section as well, for that specific requirement that was stated by Mr. Hannah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Clough?
But I have 2 that maybe connect together. Is that front entrance, would that be considered the entrance just for the downstairs apartment?
Yes, it's just the downstairs.
So as a follow-up, would it be necessary to have handicap parking in the front?
I mentioned that. I don't think so.
So then the follow-up to that would be, if those stripes were eliminated, is there enough space to make 2 spaces there?
Oh, I see what you're getting at.
Because it would only be dedicated to that one entrance.
I mean, possibly.
I just don't know
Yeah.
what the overall space is.
Would you like me to answer?
Yes,
Or-
yes.
If you
I
can,
wasn't
sure.
sure, I just want to,
Go
thank you. So going from a 2-family to a 3-family, or going from a commercial use to a residential use, as a 3-family, the requirement for a handicap space is not there yet. You have to, and don't quote me on this, exceed, I believe it's 6 dwelling units in order to require a handicap unit. It kind of gradually gets there once you get to more and more units. But I believe it's 6, and then the next step is 10, and so on and so forth, with the number that are required.
Okay.
Is there a width requirement for each parking space?
There is, yeah. It's under section, it's going to be, I can just tell you, but it's it required, but 9 by 18 are required, or 8 with one foot space. It does not look, and I wouldn't consider that. You could probably split that space to make up some more. On the right-hand side, it looks like a pretty large handicap space, as long as it met the minimum requirements. just looking at photos. But you do need to maintain egress requirements out of a building.
That was my
You
next
could not park a
question.
car in front of it without having enough path to get out of the building, so.
Is there a width requirement for that ingress egress
It,
space?
it would be 42 inches for commercial.
So it might be close to get 4 spaces in front, but you can't tell from the photographs.
We can certainly take a look. But they do meet the requirements under the ordinance.
Okay. Anything else from anybody else? Attorney Taylor? I'm sorry? Did you have one? Oh,
If I may, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair, just
yeah.
to follow up with Attorney Taylor's comments about the remaining use in the back, I just want for clarification for record so that we can, when we issue permits, that the back use is only going to be used for the apartments that are going to be
No,
used there?
No.
Okay.
It's the back use is going to be used as it's always been used by the family, storage. Friends use the garage and the conversion of the apartment is a one-to-one conversion from the office to the apartment and has no impact on the rest of the building.
So it will still be considered to use and used as storage for not the residence. So it can't be an accessory use to, it's no
Residence.
longer accessory use to the main use. So I just want to clarify that you want to keep that portion of the variance that you were granted in 1975
Yes, yes.
for storage in that area.
Yeah, that's correct.
so I don't know if that muddied the waters or cleared them, but Tom, if you can look at page 42, the bottom photograph, is that the space that you were talking about that is not going to be used for this conversion?
Yes.
So that looks like you could put more than 5 cars there if you wanted to.
That's a separate lot.
That's was my next question, because on page 40, oh wait, page 40 with the boundary line, if you look at the boundary line on the left side highlighted yellow area, that's the back of that building that you see in that picture, right?
Can you just show me, I'm now looking at what you wanted me to look at. I
Page
don't-
40,
Yeah,
this line right here. See it?
may I?
Yeah, certainly.
On the south side of the building.
I think it's the south side,
Oh, that's,
or the west side, I can't see what I'm doing here. This line right here, that's the back of that building there.
Yes, and also the back of the lot.
That's, okay, so
Yes.
over here is property owned by your client, that's another lot, all this.
No, not here. Here is
Oh.
she owns this house, and this is 19 Grove Street.
Correct,
And this property here is, which is almost all parking lot.
That's this
she
picture
owns.
then.
That's a third lot that she
Okay,
owns.
all right.
It's a vacant lot.
gotcha.
If you don't mind repeating it, your question.
Is that the one that you referred to as 53 on the chart?
Yes, that is part of 53. Yes.
Understood.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Do any of the members have any other questions for the applicant? Attorney Taylor?
I actually have a question, another question for Mr. Hagan, and to follow up what you had just said. If we were to grant a variance to allow 3 residential units in this building, how does that impact the storage in the garage section? Or is that still considered residential, even if somebody who is using it isn't living on the property?
That's where I wanted some clarification for record, so that we can make sure that after this is done, we don't have to go back for another variance to allow for a use. The way it was presented is that this is going to be converted to a 3-family, and that's all it's going to be used for, so those barns would be accessory to the main use. If not, they are separate commercial use or continue to be a separate commercial use for storage of someone that doesn't live on the property. They had a variance to allow for it, and if they want to continue to use it and just convert the office space to residential, that's fine.
And that's the 1975 variance that you're
Correct.
speaking about?
That is correct.
Attorney
Could
Cameron?
we ask Attorney Hannah to speak to that?
Yes.
I can't say anything better than what Mike just said. The barn and the storage area and the high to two large garage entrances will not be used directly by the apartment people, but they will continue to be used by the family. And I guess I would leave it at that, by the family. Still, their three sons and their, Nancy's not doing a whole lot of hoisting these days, but it's a valuable space that's not going to just suddenly remain empty. And it's accessed by by that other lot, which probably dictate that that other lot won't be sold soon.
Are there any further questions from the members? Seeing none, we can move on to, are there any comments by any people opposed to the application? There was one letter, if I recall, which I will read at this point under this heading. And I can never pronounce Med's last name properly. Can somebody help me with that?
Kopczynski.
Thank you. This is from him. Dear board members, unfortunately, my wife and I are unable to attend the meeting on March 4th, 2024. This case was originally scheduled for that date, so hence the date, due to a previous commitment. Had we been able to attend the meeting, we would have testified our opposition to the variance request. We have seen too many variances issued in our neighborhood that have not been positive. We feel the variance request fails to follow the two prongs of the variance test. Special conditions exist such that the little enforcement of the ordinance results in an unnecessary hardship. The variance is consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. If you examine the intent of the Residential Preservation District, it is to return the neighborhood to a single family. The building in question has a long history in its present form of mixed use, with the former Chabot Oil operating from there for many years. Uses may revert to the day when Grove Street was a vibrant mix of housing and business. Grove Street today is a highway that connects Water Street to Marlborough Street. We believe that before any changes be made to the uses, including by variance, the Grove Street blocks be reviewed as part of a planning process used to create the Land Development Code. The first part of that process created the downtown districts, including the edge districts. Grove Street block as well as Blake Street block were promised to be reviewed for inclusion in an edge district. It seems that there are no plans to conduct that review, as presently community development staff is concentrating on the next master plan. And that's Med and Dawn, dated February 28th, 2024. That is the only opposition that I think we have.
Well, just to be clear, I've addressed all of the variance criteria in some detail, and I'll just focus on the last sentence of his letter. It seems that there are no plans to conduct that review that he wants to have happen. Presently, community development staff is concentrating on the next master plan. Doesn't matter what they're concentrating on. There's no plan at present to review this ordinance any further. This board doesn't get to set a moratorium on the granting of variances. You can't stop the clock. If we meet the criteria in April of 2024 and deserve a variance, then it should be awarded.
Okay. I don't see any other people who wish to speak in opposition to the application. Does anyone wish to speak in support of the application? And at this point, if there's nobody here that wants to speak, I'll read Josh Greenwald's email to you, Mr. Hanna.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is dated March 28th of 2024. Good afternoon, Attorney Hanna. I am writing in support of 19 Grove Street being approved a variance for a change of use for the first floor space from office to residential. I was hired as the listing agent for this space in October of 2023 when Dr. Brooks Seaman vacated the property. The anticipation was to secure another tenant interested in utilizing the space as an office. The listing most recently expired on March 3rd, 2024. I had 0 inquiries in the office rental despite aggressive marketing and being reasonably priced. Finding a viable tenant proved to be unsuccessful due to the following reasons. Number 1, small office market is extremely small. Number 2, offices and space were too small. 3, the location is primarily residential, multifamily buildings. There's a high need for residential rentals in Keene. The highest and best use for that space going forward is as an apartment. It fits the neighborhood and is in the highest and best use for the space, in my opinion. And that's from Mr. Greenwald. Does anybody else wish to speak in favor of the application? Seeing none, we will proceed. Do you want to respond to that?
No, thank you.
Okay. If there are no further comments, we'll close the public hearing and begin the deliberations. Thank you, Mr. Hanna.
Thank you.
Anybody want to start? Attorney Taylor.
I was waiting for somebody else to jump in. I tend to agree with Attorney Hanna's statement that this will have, be less impactful in the area than the office use. I do remember when it was the coal and oil business, and it was a pretty busy office. So I can see it having a reduction in traffic, reduction in foot traffic, possibly even in addition to the automobile traffic. So I don't think that it's in, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I don't think that it's contrary to the public interest.
I would agree. I think there's also the benefit of, even if it's only an increase of 1 unit, increasing the housing stock with less traffic impact than an office use and reduced parking requirements. So I agree that it would be not contrary to the public interest in this case. Mr.
Thank you.
Hyatt, you're welcome.
It seems to me that this change moves the property closer, or in closer alignment with the other residences, as have been pointed out. So it's moving in the right direction.
Anybody else? Let's see. Based on those observations, does anybody want to make a motion that granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest?
Do we need to go through all the discussion on all?
We can do them one at a time, right? You want to go
We're
through?
supposed to have a consistent process.
Oh, all right, so. All right, we'll hold off on that motion. On the second criteria, if the variance is granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Now, I don't see any any violation of the ordinance's basic zoning objective. In fact, it probably brings it closer in line to what the intent of the ordinance is, making it more of a, or bring it closer to a single-family environment, getting rid of the mixed use and getting rid of the office use. So that brings it more consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. And I don't see any impact on health, welfare, or safety in connection with this application. Any other comments? Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, I think this one actually is one of the more difficult ones because the ordinance, and maybe this is getting closer to, the hardship, but the ordinance clearly states it wants to move towards single family. But by the same token, you're still going to residential from office and eliminating the mixed use. So I don't know if it's going in the right direction, but I think it's maybe a little bit more in conformance with the ordinance.
I agree with that. Agree? Getting some nods over here on the left, okay. If the variance were granted, would it do substantial justice? Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, I think, the basic measurement here is whether or not the public benefit outweighs any loss to the owner, and I think this one's pretty clear, public benefit of adding a housing unit as opposed to the owner having vacant property. So I think that there is definitely the public benefit in this particular instance.
Especially when you consider the public benefit derived from not having a vacant property just sitting there, yep, okay. And the public benefit of having another housing unit available on the market. Does anybody have any comments about if the variance were granted, the value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished? Does anybody see a diminution problem here?
Appears to be almost the opposite if they converted over. I'm speculating at this point, but if we're reducing the number of vehicle traffic to commercial mixed use, it would also probably reduce the number of traffic on that road, bringing it closer to the residential.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. Can you please use your microphone for the minute taker to hear you? Oh, sorry, thank you.
Oh, sorry. It seems like it'd be the opposite for it would probably increase the values. Again, I'd be speculating, but if we're reducing the number of parking and eliminating commercial use on that particular road, it'd probably reduce the traffic as well and bring it closer to a residential street.
I'm looking at the one that Mr. Hannah handed out tonight with the blue background. And you get a good picture of the neighborhood this way, and it does show that, and this may be a hardship, part of the hardship analysis too, but you're looking at a large lot size with in relation to that lot size, a very large building, and all the other surrounding buildings appear to be much smaller, but of similar uses, multifamily. So I don't see how that can translate into a property diminution problem anywhere in this neighborhood. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, I think it actually has the potential to increase the value because, one, you won't have a vacant property.
Right.
And, there's always the increased tax revenue that'll probably come from it being occupied as a residential unit.
Okay. Any further comment on the fourth one? Okay. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, first of all, does anybody want to identify those special conditions? So I think Mr. Hanna did a pretty thorough job of identifying them. One of them I mentioned, lot size in relation to building size. There's a large lot and a large building, and there's not a lot of room on the sides, or in the front for that matter. And I think he also mentioned the fact that this appears to be a three-story structure. That just contributes to the size of the building in the end, so. Attorney Taylor, sorry.
Yeah, one of the first things that I noticed when I read this application originally was how inconsistent the applicable zoning ordinance was to this street, this area. And frankly, I think that does, in and of itself, create a hardship, because as the test says, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance and the specific application of the provision to the property. Well, I can't see much relationship between the purpose of this ordinance provision to any of the properties that are there. So I think that in and of itself creates a hardship.
Since the neighborhood doesn't look like anything described in the purpose, I guess is a good point. I agree with that, too. Any other comments about any of the criteria, or the fifth one in particular? Nope, okay. So I guess what we'll do is retreat back to criteria one and consider the factors, keeping in mind, of course, what we were discussing all along. Attorney, oh, I was just gonna invite one. Do you wanna make one?
Sure, well, I'll try, see if I can get this straight. Okay, I move that we approve request for variance.
Do you wanna do the criteria first? Or you do that
No, I'll
motion?
do the
Oh,
motion.
all right, do the main motion, all right.
Variance to convert a legal non-conforming office use to a third apartment for property located at 19 Grove Street, tax map 585-055-000. That's in the residential preservation district. Do you want that zoning provision? Per section 3.2.5 of the zoning regulations.
Okay. Do we have a second for that? We have a second, yep, okay.
Second motion.
Now we'll review the criteria.
Mr. Chair, just for the benefit of the minute taker, anybody who's making a motion or seconding it, just state their name at the end of it, or if, Chair, if you just want to repeat their name, so who made the motions for the benefit of the minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Weigel, is that how we pronounce it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to mispronounce your name. All right. Yeah, so now what we're going to do is go through each criteria and vote on that individually, and then we'll circle back to the main motion. Will granting the variance result in an, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Does everybody agree with that? We have 5-0 on that. If the variance is granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Does everybody agree with that? It's unanimous. The first one was unanimous, too. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. Unanimous. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there is no fair and substantial relationship existing between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in agree? That's unanimous. Now, circling back to the main motion to approve the variance application, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. So 2024-02 is approved. And we'll move on to the next one in a minute. If anybody needs a break, just raise your hand, except when you're voting. Let's get a little warm in here.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is Z.B.A. 2024-03. I'll read the blurb and then turn it over to you, sir. 2024-03, petitioner Ryan Coyne of Sandry Realty LLC of 400 Chapman Street, Greenfield, Massachusetts, requests a variance for property located at 345 Winchester Street, tax map 111-027-000. Is in the Commerce District and owned by Sandry Realty LLC of 400 Chapman Street, Greenfield, Massachusetts. The petitioner requests a variance to permit the conversion of an analog pricing sign to digital, electronically activated changeable copy sign per Article 10.3, Table 10-2 of the zoning regulations. Mr. Hagan,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
all yours.
All right, property located at 345 Winchester Street, Zone Commerce, 0.6 acres. Current use is retail sales and a vehicle fueling station. Current store size is 1,980 square feet. The canopy size is 352 square feet. There was a variance, the only variance I could find in the file, that was on March 7th, 2011, Z.B.A. 1108 for a mechanically operated sign. Currently, they are applying for a LED, electronically operated sign. So they did get a variance for the sign that's up there currently that is mechanically operated.
What happens to that variance if this one is approved? It doesn't matter.
Like any variance, it stays with the property. So if you can do conditions that they no longer use a mechanically operated sign, but I think the way of the future, I don't anticipating seeing many, but maybe.
I guess that would be my observation, it probably doesn't matter. Kelly?
So is your understanding that this application is basically replacement? No, it's going to be an additional sign?
That's the way the application was submitted for. There is nothing indicating that they'll remove, or that they will no longer ever use it, but certainly you can talk to the applicant
Okay.
and make a
Yeah.
condition if you feel so.
Thank you.
All right, then, very good. Is Mr. Coyne here?
No, I'm Art Trumbull from Sandry Energy.
Oh, okay,
Yep,
then you're the guy.
all right. So basically, the sign that's there is basically, we're just doing a Sunoco image upgrade for that. We're gonna have the same size signs there that we're gonna presently put up there. I don't know if you guys have this picture here at all. Yeah, okay. It's right on the screen there. And it's It's not, gonna be no different or anything, and it's gonna be a static sign. It's not gonna be flicking or anything like that either.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's a static sign. It's just gonna be, stay on like it is. It's not gonna be flickering or anything like that. And it's the same size signs that are there presently.
Attorney Taylor, yeah.
Yeah, so to follow up on my earlier question, so is this a replacement or is this an additional sign?
It's not an additional sign. It's gonna be the same sign that's there. It's just gonna be re-imaged to what you're seeing there, right here.
Okay, so essentially you're replacing what's
Yes,
there?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about the criteria?
Well, basically, what we want to do is, like the other stations, is we want to offer two different signs. One's to show a discount on the price, and the other one's going to have the same thing like that.
To help you, this is the criteria that you submitted for, if you want to go through those for the benefit of the board.
Well, basically, what we want to do is just upgrade the sign to what it is, and the purpose is to draw in more customers and stuff at that location.
I see in your application that part of your reason is to, I guess this is consistent with your answer to what Attorney Taylor asked you a minute ago. You want to use the current technology.
Correct, with LEDs, yes.
Yep, and you want to reduce employee risk.
Yes.
Can you tell me how that reduces employee risk?
Well, a lot of times, I mean, with showing the pricing differences and stuff like that onto the signs and things like that, a lot of customers don't understand that. We do get some. As far as looking to the risk, there's not really too much there at all.
So there's no danger of employees going out there and hand changing signs?
No, because it's going to be digital. They can do it right from inside the store at that point there.
Right, but right now they don't have that electronic benefit, right?
No, the thing works sometimes as an old mechanical one that they use that they try to change it with.
But your new proposal would reduce that risk?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
that's what I was trying to get at.
I'm sorry, it's the box is out back in the office too, so yes.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. So could you clarify what portions of the sign are going to be changeable? Is it just the price?
Just the price ones on that. They would have a little box out back that would change it automatically, show the discount. One would be the regular price and then the discounted price right below it.
Okay, and is it two-sided?
Yes, yes. It's just like the one that presently is there is too.
So would I be correct in saying that you change it as needed? So if the price and discount doesn't change for a week, you won't change it?
We only change it if there's a increase in the gas, or
Or maybe you
decrease,
were-
or decrease. I mean, let's say decrease first, then increase. Yes,
Okay, thank you.
that's the gas, what it is these days.
So you're out there changing it every 10 seconds?
Well, you called a
Just
few
kidding.
years ago, yes,
Right,
yes.
right. Okay. So in this picture, I'm not sure if you have the page numbers in front of you, but I'm looking at page 60. It's this sheet right here that I think you have
Yes,
up.
yep.
Now, none of these signs would block any traffic, right? The visual?
No, it's up high, no.
It looks pretty up pretty high, okay.
Yep.
And they don't emit any noise or odors or anything like that?
No, not at all, no.
Okay. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, one of the things that we have to consider is, you probably heard us agonizing over it in the last application, the unnecessary hardship. Now, you wrote that it's not applicable, but we have to be able to find that there is a hardship in order to approve a variance. It's a requirement.
We want to be like most of the other stations now that already have the LEDs, they're already showing the discounts and stuff like that. Presently, we are not able to do that, and our gallons have gone down and stuff, most definitely and stuff. We're not able to advertise that or anything.
Yes.
Do the Sunoco marketing standards require this type of change on Sandry Energy?
The images, yes, we have to follow their images and stuff, most definitely, yes.
So if you were not to change the image, would that result in a hardship to your marketing?
Oh, yes,
scores
most
for
definitely, yes.
Sandry?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, sorry, yes.
The current sign you have up there, the mechanical one, is it backlit by fluorescence or some other method?
The one that's presently there, it's just lit, and it's mechanical, they flip it, it's an old sign.
But it's something that your employees would have to go out and change if those bulbs.
They
burn
have to
out.
go out, literally up into front of it to get it to change and stuff like that, go outside and everything.
But to sustain the illumination from that old mechanical sign, you'd have to have somebody go out there on a lift or a.
Oh, yes, yes.
Or a ladder and go up there and physically change those out.
No, it's not, it is a mechanical thing that they have to go out there, and sometimes, now it's to the point of where they have to go right up underneath. They used to be able to do it right inside the location, but no, it's just an old system, old mechanical one. And it's not LED at all or anything.
So the new one would provide reliability and eliminate your employees having to get on ladders.
Correct, yes.
Attorney Taylor.
So if the variance was not granted, what would that mean for your business?
We wouldn't be, it would hurt, we're not with the Sunoco imaging at all at that point or anything. It would just be like an older looking station at that point there.
Are there any, I'm sorry, Mr.
Um,
Clough.
In terms of the brightness, does it adjust nighttime to daytime? Or is it programmed to do that so it's not
Yeah, it's
super
just,
bright at
it's gonna
night?
just light up the numbers is all it does, like they're kind of like the picture that you see there on it. It's not, it's just LEDs, they're not bright like the old style were or anything.
Thank you.
Are there any other convenience locations or filling stations near your location on Winchester Street? I'm trying to visualize them.
Any other gas stations
Yeah,
on?
yeah.
No, on West Street, most of them are.
And they most have, most all of them have.
All of them almost do have that,
Yep.
when they have the discount and everything else just like that, yes.
Okay. Do you think that approving this variance would impact the values of any surrounding properties around your property?
I think it would, yes. It would look much nicer, more informed with, with the other stations and stuff, and most definitely the lighting would, yes.
And the lighting wouldn't interfere with anybody else's use in the neighborhood, right?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all.
Yeah, Attorney Taylor.
Yeah, for Mr. Hagan, does the current sign, does the sign as it currently exists, does it meet the zoning requirements? I tried to figure it out by looking at it.
Sure. I couldn't answer if it met today's requirements, but what I could say is that if what they're proposing, if the signs remain the same size as the existing, the cabinet sizes that are there now, they would be allowed to be put back up there on that, even if it was a non-conforming sign.
In other words, it would be vested.
Yeah, it would be it's legally non-conforming, so if they were to change out those cabinets, they would be able to do that without requiring another variance because of the legal non-conformity of it.
Thank you.
When you say cabinets, what do you mean by that? These boxes on the signs?
Correct, yeah. So if you see the 24 hours,
Yes.
that's a cabinet.
Okay.
Typically, they're faced. They may, again, I haven't seen the application other than pictures, and typically, this is something we go over in the review process. We would look at the existing file, make sure, or try and verify the size. If not, we would ask the applicant for the existing size, and we would allow them to replace it with the same size. If, from what I understand, they're going to turn that 355
Correct.
vertical and remain the same size.
And that's what the after picture appears to show.
Appears to show, yes. They would be required to meet that or come for another variance if they could not meet that.
Okay.
If it is non-conforming, they wanted to increase, another variance would be required. But currently, the way it's written and proposed, and our understanding is that it will conform to what's already there, and they would be able to do that under the ordinance.
Okay.
So just for clarification from my education then,
Yes.
is this variance required?
So the variance that they're going for currently is under the section where the signage, the type of signage is not allowed under our ordinance. So if they wanted to put up another mechanical, which they got a variance on, again, the sign that's there now wasn't allowed because it was a mechanical sign. The term in our ordinance is animated, which can be wind-activated, wind, electronic, mechanically activated. The only types of signs that are currently allowed other than drive-up menu board signs that are electronically activated and permitted under the ordinance, that's the only exemption at this time. The fueling has not been brought up to that standard yet, so
Great, thank you, Mike.
not a problem.
Okay. You might have answered this question already, so I apologize for asking you the same question a different way, but if this variance were not granted, how would it hurt your business?
Well, the image wouldn't be up to where it should be for Sunoco at all or anything like that. As far as offering our discounts, it impacts it tremendously because we can show them, at the regular price, and if they're Sunoco app and stuff, like they get 10 cents a gallon off, and it'd just be more competitive with the other locations too.
Okay. Yes.
Previously, you mentioned you had a reduction in the number of gallons that you've already seen compared to other stations in the area that have already upgraded their signs. So you'd say this trend of lower sales would continue if you didn't upgrade your sign?
I would say so, yeah, because we're not advertising our discounts at all. We just offer whatever Sunoco does on their signs and stuff like that. But, showing them is a big thing, showing the discount right up on the signs.
Thank you.
So is it fair to say that the public would benefit from the information that you're posting, knowing when the discount is available and
Most
things like that?
definitely. It will constantly show it. You always put up the big price when you have increases and stuff like that. But when you're showing a discount down below, people look for that,
Okay.
especially when they're shopping. And just the sign alone is nice looking too. It improves the property.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay. Does anybody want to speak in opposition to this application? I don't have any correspondence up here to read for this one, I guess. Anybody want to speak in opposition? Anybody want to speak in favor? Let's see, either one. Does everybody feel we have enough information to act on this? I agree, okay. We're going to close the public hearing and go into our deliberations right now then. So we'll just talking about your application.
Mike, do you want these back? Thank you, I didn't have those.
I'll go first this time, Attorney Taylor.
Please.
Public, I don't think the application is contrary to the public interest because, number one, it offers information that the public is interested in knowing. And number two, the applicant spoke about reducing, I guess, risk of injury to employees in terms of having to go out there all the time and change signs. That procedure would be eliminated. In terms of the spirit of the ordinance and the public safety part of it, I don't see that there will be any risk or exposure to public health, safety, or welfare. The lights will not be bright. There'll be no noise or odor. And it's not going to change the character of the neighborhood in that particular area because there's a lot of commerce there in that area. The harm to the owner would be pretty high and not outweighed by any corresponding public benefit. So in terms of the public benefit, I think the public stands to benefit from more information rather than less, especially if it's related to pricing information. And I don't, not from listening to the applicant or from us talking about it, I don't see anything in there that would result in surrounding properties losing value over this sign application. And on the unnecessary hardship, this may be a stretch, but I'll make it. The special condition of the property that distinguishes it from other properties is that this is a gas station who, would be at a disadvantage if it wasn't allowed to do what every other gas station in this city is allowed to do. So that's what makes this property different. If one property is going to be allowed to have these signs, then it ought to be even-handed and applied fairly. And I think that's a special condition that distinguishes it from other similar properties. And the application of the ordinance, sign ordinance, to that property would cause an unnecessary hardship for that reason. So I think that the test is met, but those are my comments. Anybody have any? Mr. Guyette?
On unnecessary hardship, if I could add also that what I heard was that Sunoco has certain marketing standards that may not be met without changing the sign. And depending on the relationship between Sandry and Sunoco with their agreements, there could be additional hardship there.
I'm not sure that's a lawful hardship, but it does tie into the problem of competition and the dissimilarity between that and other properties. And I know you spoke of a case one time where financial hardship would be, I think it was the Harrington case. I can't remember myself, but you don't have to do that now. I mean, there's a limited set of circumstances where you can consider financial hardship. To me, you think it means in a common sense way. But for a zoning hardship to exist, there has to be something special about the property that distinguishes it from others in the area. And that's creating, when you apply the ordinance to that property with those special conditions, that creates the hardship, when the ordinance gets applied. And that's why I'm trying to compare it to other similarly situated gas stations or convenience stores, or both. Yes.
Yeah, further on the hardship, financial impacts are definitely a consideration. I think the standard, even though I can't find the case, is that it can't be the sole consideration. So I also think one thing we haven't really discussed is where that gas station is located. Its whole, I don't want to call it attitude, but the way it presents itself to the public has changed greatly over the last year, 18 months, as we all endured the construction. And now there's the Rotary. So I think that one of the things that contributes to hardship is a visibility issue, because cars are looking at the property, at the signs, from a completely different angle from what they did when it was originally erected. So I think that does contribute. Again, it's not, in this particular application, it's not any one thing. I think there's several factors that contribute to the hardship. One of them being its visibility and the way that the public can sort of look at the property has changed over time.
I agree with that point of view, yeah. Anybody else? Okay. This is application 2024-03. Does anybody care to make a motion as to what to do with this case? Attorney Taylor?
Well, nobody else is gonna jump in. I lost my, there it is. I moved that we approve Z.B.A. 2024-03 for property at 345 Winchester Street, tax map 111-027-000 in the Commerce District for a variance to permit an electronically activated changeable copy sign, which is otherwise not allowed per Article 10.3, Table 10-2 of the zoning regulations.
I second it.
Mr. Clough seconds the motion, all right. Okay, so now let's consider the criteria. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? That's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. That's unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. That's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. That's unanimous. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in an unnecessary hardship because there is no fair and substantial relationship existing between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. That's unanimous. So returning to the main motion to approve 24-03, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay. It's approved.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next item is ZBA 2024-04. It looks like 2024 and 2024-05 are the same applicant. Mr. Hagan, before I read those, is there some reason why we shouldn't take these together?
I don't see there's a reason why you couldn't take them together.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Before I read these, why don't you give us the briefing on it?
Sure, I'd love to. 521 Park Avenue, zoned conservation, currently 46 acres is the property that they're looking to seek a variance on. The Monadnock View Cemetery, it houses the Monadnock View Cemetery as well as a 4,800 square foot maintenance building for the cemetery, and as well as the Monadnock View Community Garden, and it has 60 plots. I thought that was interesting. And the city also put aside 6 additional plots for the community kitchen, so they grow their vegetables there for the community kitchen. There are no Z.B.A. decisions on file for this property that I could find.
All right, I will read the application now. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, so, just to make sure I'm clear procedurally, so we can discuss them together, but we will then need to deliberate and vote on them separately?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess we'll do the fact-finding together and then break it down from there. So, 2024-04 petitioner Revision Energy, Inc. of 7A Commercial Drive, Brentwood, I assume that's New Hampshire, doesn't say, but requests a variance for property located at 521 Park Avenue, tax map 227-027-000. Is in the Conservation District and is owned by the City of Keene. The petitioner requests a variance to permit the installation of a large-scale solar energy system on undeveloped land in the Conservation District per Article 7.3.5 of the zoning regulations. And ZBA 2024-05 is the same petitioner of 7A Commercial Drive in Brentwood, requests a variance for property located at 521 Park Avenue, tax map 227-027-000, in the Conservation District and owned by the City of Keene. The petitioner requests a variance to permit the installation of a large-scale solar energy system within a 50-foot setback required in the Conservation District, and for large-scale solar energy systems in the Solar Energy System Ordinance per Article 7.3.5 and Article 16.2.3 of the zoning regulations. Do we have anybody here tonight? Please have a seat.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Jason Reimers. I'm with BCM Environmental and Land Law, representing Revision Energy. With me is Megan Yulin of Revision Energy, and also Tara Kessler has helped prepare the application as well. We are seeking 2 variances. One I would call the use variance, and the other one is the dimensional variance. The first one is from section 7.3.5 to permit the use on this property, and the second one, as you stated, is from relief from the 50-foot setback. I also note that if the variances are granted, we would need a conditional use permit from the planning board as well. And I also note that it was the city that brought this property to Revision's attention for this use. So before I go into the variance criteria, I'd like Megan Yulin to kind of introduce Revision and say whatever you'd like to say.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Megan Yulin. I am a solar project developer with Revision Energy, and our company is an employee-owned certified B Corporation, and we are guided by our mission, vision, and values of building a better world through solar power. We operate out of 2 offices in New Hampshire, Brentwood and Enfield. And we've had the privilege of working with the City of Keene on 2 prior municipal projects for the wastewater treatment plant and the DPW, as well as many Keene nonprofits, small businesses, and residents through our day-to-day work and through Solarize Monadnock a few years ago. We applaud the city for their goal of transitioning to 100% clean energy by 2030, and we're excited for opportunities for partnership, which has brought us here today. We have a agreement with the city of Keene to explore development opportunities, one on the Medina View Cemetery parcel, a section of that parcel that is unused. This solar project, it would be a large-scale solar energy system. Under the Keene Development Code, it's about 59,000 square feet, or 1.3 acres, so a small section of the overall parcel. And the power would be used by the city of Keene, or at least to benefit the Keene community through a community solar farm model. The project itself would be a fixed ground-mounted system. There are no moving parts, and we have proposed screening as shown in the site plan to meet the guidelines for solar energy systems in the development code. And I think I'll pass it back to Attorney Reimers.
Great. I'm going to begin with the use variance. The first two variance criteria are related and considered together often. I'll address them together. This project satisfies both of the first two variance criteria, as it will not be contrary to the public interest and it will observe the spirit of the ordinance. And as our Supreme Court has said, two ways of looking at this is whether it will alter the essential character of the locality or neighborhood, or whether it would threaten public health and safety or welfare, and this variance would do neither one. The array would be located on an unused part of the cemetery that has existing underground utilities that make this area unsuitable for burials. I spoke with Andy Bohannon, who is now Deputy City Manager. I believe that's his new title. He was involved with identifying this property for this solar use. And he identified it as a good candidate for solar. There's a letter of intent that we attached to one of the variance applications that is signed by the city. And that letter of intent describes, I believe it's 4 properties in Keene that would be suitable for solar, and at least one of those has already been developed. Is that right? The wastewater, or it discusses them. The utilities here that run through this part of the cemetery seem to include electrical, sewer, and water. And these utilities serve that building that is like a facilities building for the cemetery and for the recreation department. Andy was telling me that when the Parkwood apartments nearby were developed, it was at the same time that this building, this facilities building, was developed, and it made the most sense to run the utilities through the field over toward Parkwood. And the site plan that we submitted that's attached to both of our applications, it shows an area where these utilities are that would essentially run through the middle of the solar field. And I went out there a couple times, and I agree that this is not one of the better looking parts of the cemetery. It's close to that maintenance building, which has a lot of city trucks, at least today it did, parked nearby. There's stacks of picnic tables waiting for summer out back. There's a there's a large pile of granite curbing waiting to be reused. It's not a scenic area, and this area will not be used for burials ever, not only because of the utilities that are there, but that's the main reason, but also because it's just not a desired part of the cemetery. Andy told me that it being tucked away and not visible from the road makes it less desirable from a burial standpoint. So this area, although part of the cemetery, is never going to be used for cemetery purposes. Well, except to have the utilities that serve the building that helps run the cemetery. Part of this area, as Mr. Hagan said, is used as a community garden. That is shown on our site plan, which is page 87. You can see part of those community gardens to the north of the proposed solar area. But I did learn that even with the solar array being located here, there is still room for another row of community garden. I don't think there's a plan for that now, but in the future, if they wanted to expand that, this solar array would not prevent it. I guess before I go on, can I clarify anything on this site plan about what is where?
How high are these arrays?
14 feet. And I'll speak about height with regard to the vegetation and whatnot. The proposed area is really ideal for solar. It is already cleared. It is perfectly flat. And it's between the utility building and the Parkwood Apartments carports. You can see the carports on the plan. Those are those three long buildings right up within 10 feet of the property line. It is out of sight from most of the grave sites. And on the Parkwood Apartments side, which the Parkwood Apartments are those two buildings, I would say to the left of the carports, the solar array will be blocked by not only the carports, which are surprisingly high. They have a pitched roof. I would guess that they are 15 to 20 feet high. But then right on the other, behind the carports, right on the property line is a row of existing mature trees that I would say are about 35 feet tall. So you've got Parkwood Apartments, their driving area, carports, tall trees, and then this flat field. And so we're proposing to put the solar array kind of up against the edge of that field. And again, the array will be about 14 feet high. Using this area for a solar system will not alter the existing character of the neighborhood. I think there's two ways to determine what an existing character of a neighborhood is. And first, look at what's actually there, how it's being used, and look at the zoning ordinance and look at what can be used there. So this is a mixed-use area. Surrounding this area, and when I talk about this area, I'm talking about this field. Surrounding this field are the Parkwood Apartments, the Cedar Crest Center for Children with Disabilities, the First Church of Keene, which is through the woods, and the cemetery itself. So those are the mixed uses surrounding this area. The field itself is tucked away and largely hidden from view. So for those reasons, adding solar to this mixed-use area will not alter the character of the neighborhood. And I actually think it would complement the neighborhood by adding a beneficial use and putting this land to its highest and best use for the community. As for what uses are allowed here, Section 7.3.5, which is the section that we're seeking a variance from, only allows 3 uses: cemetery, conservation area, and telecommunications facilities. Those are the only 3 uses allowed in the conservation district. All 3 of these permitted uses are passive in nature, and so is a solar array. This area not only will not be used for cemetery purposes, but, so that's one of the 3 permitted uses. It also doesn't have the qualities of a conservation area, which is another one of the permitted uses. Conservation area is defined in your ordinance as an area of undeveloped open space that preserves and protects natural features, wildlife, and critical environmental features, as well as sites of historical or cultural significance, and may include opportunities for passive recreation, such as hiking trails and lookout structures and environmental education facilities. This area doesn't have any of that. It's just it's a flat field. I've been out there twice. I've never seen people on it. It's certainly not used by the Parkwood Apartments residents because they're blocked by the carport And there might even be a fence in between, but I don't think that's material. So if you look at the three uses that are allowed, this use will not displace either of the two, the cemetery use or conservation area use, because it's just not suitable for that. And this use is similar to the third and only third use that's there, which is telecommunications facility. And because a telecommunications facility is allowed here, I would submit that a solar array is pretty similar. And so that would not alter the character of the neighborhood. This use will also not threaten public health, safety, or welfare. There won't be a danger to anyone. Solar panels do not make noticeable noise. They don't have glare. They're hidden from view by existing trees, carports, and a proposed fence and proposed vegetative screening that revision is proposing. The ground below them will remain pervious. So rather than threatening public health, safety, or welfare, this system is a benefit to the public. And the letter of intent that was signed by the city and revision discusses the city's renewable energy goals and the desirability of the system. So I would say that the city council has kind of already declared this system, in their opinion, to be in the public good and not a threat to public health, safety, or welfare. So for all of those reasons, the applicant satisfies the first two variance criteria. Substantial justice is a balancing act. The loss to the applicant and the landowner if the variance is denied versus the gain to the general public. As I have said, the variance, I don't think, will be contrary to denying the variance will not result in any gain to the general public. And I think a denial would actually not benefit the public, because the public interest here is to help Keene reach its renewable energy goal of 100% renewables by 2030. So the public would lose out if this variance is denied. Denial would also cause a loss for the landowner, which is the city of Keene, for a few reasons. This is a cemetery, but this portion of the cemetery is not suitable for cemetery uses and is not needed for community gardens, so a denial would deprive the city of the best use of this portion of the cemetery. And second, a denial would also make it more difficult for the city to reach its renewable energy goal. For those reasons, the substantial justice prong is satisfied, would be satisfied by granting the variance. As for property values, this array will not diminish property values. The array will be screened from view from the Parkwood Apartments by the existing trees and carports. There will be minimal views to the north, northeast, and south sides, and those will be minimal because there's going to be vegetative buffers that will be installed. It will not have any impact on surrounding properties, it being a passive use, and the surrounding properties being a mix of high-density residential, commercial, institutional land, lend to that conclusion. The Parkwood Apartments are actually in a high-density 1 zone, and the Cedar Crest and the Baptist Church are in a low-density zone. So you've got more intensive uses already happening all around. Given the passive nature of the proposed solar energy system and its limited impact on the adjacent mixed-use area, the value of surrounding properties will not be diminished by this use. Unnecessary hardship. The first question, as you know, is whether the property has special conditions that distinguish it from other properties in the area. This is a unique property with several special conditions. First, the property is in the Conservation District, which only allows 3 uses by right. Second, being part of the cemetery, it's special in that it's not suitable for cemetery use because of the underground utilities, and it will never be used for burials. That makes it unique. It's also unsuitable for conservation area use due to the lack of important natural or cultural features. It's not even very scenic. Third, this portion of the cemetery is unique because it's flat and already cleared of trees and vegetation, and already contains a vegetated buffer and carports that already screen this area. It's a all of that makes it a very unique site that distinguishes it from any other properties in the surrounding area. If the ordinance provision, 7.3.5, is strictly enforced, this land would be practically unusable due to the limited uses allowed in the district and due to the special condition of this portion of the parcel. Denying the variance would not further the purposes of section 7.3.5, which is to protect land areas that are identified as necessary to preserve as open space because of their critical or delicate environmental nature by allowing for only certain passive uses. Because this portion of the property doesn't contain any of those attributes, there is not a fair and substantial relationship between the ordinance limitation and the application of that limitation to this property. Finally, the proposed use is a reasonable one for all of the reasons I've stated. It's flat, it's tucked away, it really can't be used for much else, and it will help the city meet its goals. And finding suitable areas is not easy. And so the city has identified one, and I haven't seen anything that would make this use unreasonable. I also think that the applicant, and like in the prior case, I don't think we need to you need to use the alternative unnecessary hardship test, but because we satisfy the primary test. But here, this area can't really be used without this variance. Sure, a telecommunications facility might come along, but that hasn't happened, and I think a better use is for solar. Moving on to the dimensional variance, and I'll try not to repeat. There's a lot of these attributes of the site and limitations of the site, are kind of overlapping with the two variances. But the applicable setback here is 50 feet, and that's the relief we're seeking. That's the provision that we're seeking relief from. And there's two separate sections that set forth this 50-foot setback, 16.2.3 and 7.3.2. There's proposed to be a perimeter of fence around the entire solar field. The fence would be 15 feet from the boundary to the west, which would be the Parkwood apartment side, and 10 feet from the north property line with Cedar Crest. So 15 feet from Parkwood, 10 feet from Cedar Crest. The first thing would be in this setback would be the perimeter fence, which will be 6 feet tall.
The vegetation and then the fence.
What's that?
That would be the vegetation, I think, and then, right? Maybe not, sorry.
Not in between Parkwood, right? Oh, you're right. Over here, the first thing would be
Okay.
the vegetation.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
apologize. Yep.
no,
Nope,
thank
you're
you.
right.
I misspoke. Along the Parkwood side, the first thing would be the fence. And then on the north side with Cedar Crest, the first thing that you would see would be the new vegetative screening that would be in between the fence and Cedar Crest. The fence will go around the entire solar field, and the solar array itself would be 10 to 12 feet within the fence. So by my calculations, correct me if I'm wrong, the array itself would be about 25 to 27 feet from the west property line and 20 to 22 feet from the north property line. Okay. The first two variance criteria. Relaxing this setback would not be contrary to the public interest, and it would observe the spirit of the ordinance. On the west side, you've got the Parkwood carports are within 10 feet of the line. And then the line of mature trees between the carport and the fence. Those two screening things will block the view from the apartments. There's no benefit to the apartments to place the array or the fence further from the carports or the existing trees, as the apartments don't use, and I don't think they can see that area. And it seems to me that actually having them closer to the property line, you get more of the benefit of the tall trees that are there in the carports. I think it screens them even more than if you were to put this all out in the middle of the field only. But again, this field is not used by the apartments. On the Cedar Crest side, the view will be mostly blocked by vegetative screening and the fence. And so the general purpose of setbacks is to ensure there is an adequate buffer between structures and neighboring parcels to mitigate potential impacts such as noise, overcrowding, and to lessen visual impacts of the solar array. Enforcing this setback will not protect neighbors from noise, traffic, overcrowding, or visual impact because it will be screened. And again, noise really isn't. I've got solar panels, solar array at my house. They don't make any noise. So that is not an issue here. So you wouldn't be furthering the purposes of the setbacks by denying this variance and applying those setbacks. This variance would not be contrary to the public interest because it will be screened. It's a passive land use. And it won't alter the character of the neighborhood or threaten public health or safety by having them closer to the property line, as there really is no threat to public health or safety, and it will be screened. As for substantial justice, any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice that would occur here if the variance is denied. Sorry to keep repeating myself, but the cemetery can't be used for cemetery purposes, or this part of the cemetery can't be used for cemetery purposes, and the field is an ideal place for this. Granting the variance will allow the property owner, the city, to expand its renewable energy sources and to use its property in the best way. The solar energy system cannot be located further north or northeast because of the existing community gardens. I think the question was asked whether it's possible, and the city didn't want to, and we don't want to either. But that's the reason why it's kind of pushed up closer to the property lines. Not allowing this in this location will cause a loss to both Revision and the city without any gain to the public. And I've already gone through the benefits that the city has trying to realize by citing solar. Property values. Given the limited impact of the proposed solar energy system on the adjacent properties and its proximity to higher intensity residential and commercial industrial institutional uses, granting the setback will not diminish the value of any of those surrounding properties. It'll be fully screened. Both with the existing buffer and proposed vegetative buffers and the fence. So for all of those reasons, surrounding properties are well protected and insulated from this solar array. Unnecessary hardship. I've gone through all of the special conditions that make this a truly unique property in this mixed-use neighborhood. That would be the city is considerably limited in how it can use this land due to the use limitations of the district, the 50-foot setback, the existing underground utilities, and the existing community gardens. Like I said, it cannot be moved further away. The system has to be of a certain size to make it a worthwhile endeavor to justify the utility connection costs. If this array were forced to be within the 50-foot setbacks, it just wouldn't work, given the other constraints on the property. So given the attributes of the property and the constraints on the property, there's no fair and substantial relationship between the setback provision and applying it here. And again, the use is reasonable for a variety of reasons. I could just repeat myself about screening and all of that, but I'd rather answer any questions that you might have.
Regarding the vegetative screen you have to the south, how tall is that?
Are we looking at,
Page 86.
okay,
The larger.
so to the south?
I don't think we've specified a height or necessarily specific plantings that would be considered at maybe the site plan review stage. I would expect that the plantings would be at least 6 feet tall, and so that would mitigate most but not all of the upper view of the panels.
The impetus for that question is you have them aimed southeast and at a 15-degree angle. So if you scroll down, will that cause glare or glint down towards the buildings to that southeast? We've been talking about the parkwood that's right next to it, but the panels are aimed in the other direction.
Right. The panels are coated with an anti-reflective surface, so glare is extremely minimal.
Thank you.
And by the way, I do have, there are some photos that we took that show the existing line of trees, and you can kind of see the carports behind them. Those.
Yeah, I also believe the southeast is where the cemetery is, so that's where the glare would be going.
I don't, in my solar system that I have at home, there's not any glare. Whatever that coating does, it works.
Jason, why is the city even here?
Because the city is exempt from zoning regulations?
Right.
You know, I don't know exactly, but what I do know,
I'm
what I understand,
What the hell?
what I understand is that the city, I don't know who told me this, but I think preferred that this be, you know, properly vetted through the variance process. That's the best answer I could give you. I wondered the same.
Okay.
And
I thought I was going nuts.
No.
Leave them not.
I wondered the same, and, you know,
Right, for different reasons.
until the city exercises its right of first refusal to own and control the array, it's Revision's project right now.
Okay. I'm not complaining, I just was curious.
I was too.
Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, that was gonna be my the first question was, like, are you leasing it and then the city's buying it? Because that would get you out of 674.54.
I can explain some of how this would work if you want.
No,
Okay.
I leave that part up to other people in the city. Couple of questions. Where are the, I'm assuming you're gonna have to have special kind of power lines or something for this energy to be transmitted. Where are those gonna be located?
There currently is proposed a 3-phase extension coming in from Park Ave behind the last row of headstones.
Can you speak up a little?
I apologize. There currently is a 3-phase extension proposed behind the last row of graves coming in from Park Ave. It would be underground and connecting into new utility infrastructure for the solar array.
Within the, I'm a little concerned if it's within the boundary there.
Right.
I assume it's, I mean, there's a row of trees there.
Right, it would be between the trees and the grave sites. It is a tight location, but they have trenched there previously to bring in a communications line. And we would be obtaining, I believe, city council approval needed to be within that proximity to the grave sites. That's one option. There is also been interest from the neighboring nonprofit. If that interest is renewed, our connection could be different. So the connection is not.
Which nonprofit?
Cedar Crest has previously expressed interest. I cannot speak to that level of interest now, but if variances are granted tonight, then that may be a possibility for them if they remain interested.
Also, if it's approved and it goes through all the process and gets constructed, what is your access going to be both for construction and for maintenance?
The access would be through the existing cemetery
The part that
Road.
goes by the
that goes to the
maintenance
maintenance
building, that
facility.
little dirt track. I also was concerned about the reflections. Hopefully the anti-glare stuff works. One other concern that I have, if you don't mind me, is it okay if I switch
go-
between the
go right ahead.
applications? Usually, I'm a little concerned by the generality, saying that you just want to be within the 50-foot setback. Usually, our practice has been to say not more than X feet to the setback. So would there be any objection if we are to approve this, if we limited that, such as, first of all, I guess I should ask, is a 6-foot fence is considered a structure?
Not in accordance with the zoning, but anything over 6 feet in the building code would be considered a structure.
Well, 6 feet or over 6 feet?
Over 6 feet.
Okay,
correct.
so a 6-foot fence wouldn't be considered a,
Not according to the zoning ordinance, correct.
well, we've got to consider, if it's going to be 6 feet and the building code says it's a structure, then it's a structure. So we have to consider if we're going to
And-
limit the distance, say something like, not, let's see, not more than the west, not more than, or not less than 25 feet from the western property line, and on the north, not less than 20 feet or whatever, yeah.
Just to follow up on that question, under section 1.3 dot 3, section 4, structure setback exemptions, specifically under 5, or under 6, so it's 4A6, fences are exempt from setback requirements.
Okay, I don't think I followed all those numbers.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm trying. So it's between 2 pages. So you got section 1.3.1, setbacks and building dimensions, right?
Okay,
And then you go down to section 4 of that.
1.3.4?
No, so it goes specifically down to, so it goes, there's 1.3.3 setbacks, building dimensions, and then there's A, 1, 2, 3, 4. Under 4 of that A is another A, and then it goes to 6, which is fences. Oh, page number would be helpful. Is one, it's under page 1.5.
1.5?
1-5, under your ordinance.
Okay, well, that does answer the
So-
question, because I didn't know how it was
Yep, no,
considered under the zoning.
building and
ordinance.
zoning, 2 different things.
Yes.
It will be treated as a structure, and we'll have to meet all the snow, wind load requirements, but under zoning, it's exempt.
Okay, so I guess back to my original question for the applicant, which is, would you have any objection if we put a number on the amount that you can violate the setback?
If,
Because
No,
if
no.
we say approve, sure, you can have a variance to be, violate the 50-foot setback, you could put it 6 inches from,
no, we don't have any objection to that, as long as we can make sure we're all talking about what the right number
Right.
is.
Yes.
So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we're looking for like a minimum, or like no closer than, on the west side, the Parkwood side, 25 feet for the edge of the array. And then, because that's what we're asking for, to have forget the fence, that's, for security and screening. But we want the array to be as close as 25 feet on the Parkwood side, on the west side.
Okay.
And then on the north side with Cedar Crest, we want to be no closer than 20 feet, right?
Yep.
And those are the only two sides in question here, right?
Correct.
Yes, we're much more than 50 from the Baptist church
Yeah, that's what it looks like from the
side.
plan.
And it's completely screened,
Okay.
even right now with no leaves.
Just a quick one on the Cedar Crest side, the 20-foot buffer is a very short distance because of the angle of the lot lines, is that correct? Based on this drawing?
Can you repeat that?
So
On the Cedar Crest side.
The lot line to Cedar Crest is not parallel with the fencing or the array. So the violation of the 50-foot buffer, it seems to me, is only at that intersecting corner. Am I reading that correctly?
I think you are, yes.
So it gets better and better and better. the further
Correct,
you
yeah.
go.
That's just at the closest pinch point.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then it veers away.
Oh, sorry, yes.
One other question. You spoke about the construction portion and access to it. Could you speak a little bit about the continuing maintenance to it? Will these have to be replaced in a certain time frame, or is there continuing maintenance that will have to be performed to them on a regular basis?
Continuing maintenance is very minimal. Typically for sites like this, we expect, anywhere from like maybe 2 to 4 service visits a year just for an annual inspection and verification. The panels are warranted for 25 years and typically expected to last upwards of 40 years. Some of the electrical equipment like the inverters, they have a little bit of a shorter lifetime, so they would be replaced at some point within that time frame. But in terms of disturbance into the site from maintenance, it won't be very much at all. You'll have one, maybe electrician's van that comes in to perform those visits.
Understood. And then you've also, it appears that you've already labeled out the underground utility lines that we've mentioned before in regards to the burial sites. Is the plan to construct solar panels over that area too, or are you excluding that area because of having to dig for your supports for the 14-footers?
The area south of the last row of panels is excluded to allow for space from the screening, so the panels are not shaded. So there won't be any panels along the electrical, the route in the middle?
Yes, ma'am.
I see. That is excluded because of the underground utility lines that are there. We don't want to hit those with foundations.
Understood. Thank you.
Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, how high are these off the ground?
The lower edge is 3 feet off the ground. So they're fixed via ground screws that go into the ground and rackings attached to that. So the lower edge of the panels is at 3 feet, and then the upper edge would be at no more than 14 feet.
And
You're
it's-
thinking,
So they're just on the poles, they're not on a slab or?
they are not on a slab. They are basically giant screws that go into the ground, and then we affix the racking structure to those screws.
And what happens to the ground underneath the arrays?
The ground screws cause very minimal disturbance. There's really only disturbance where they enter the ground. Once the array's commercial lifespan is over, it can be fully decommissioned. Everything can be removed from site and returned to.
Right, well, I'm looking at the maintenance too of, the grass and the
Understood.
weeds and, ponding and everything else that happens back
Yeah,
there.
we won't be changing the grade of the site at all, so there shouldn't be any negative impacts resulting from the installation of the ground screws. We do maintain our sites. If it ends up being owned by Revision Energy. If it's owned by the city of Keene, then, maintenance falls to the city, but typically just mowing within the site would take care of any maintenance.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay. I don't see anybody back there to speak in for or against, so we'll bypass that. We don't have anybody online, right?
We don't do that anymore.
Okay, good. One less thing to worry about. Anything more you want to add?
No?
What, just for informational purposes, what's the planning board step that you mentioned at the very beginning?
Conditional use permit. Per Article 16, which is for large-scale solar, it requires, unless located in the industrial district, medium-scale or large-scale ground-mounted solar energy systems shall require a conditional use permit by the planning board.
Okay,
And I also want to just note that this is technically a large-scale one, but it's on the very lower end of largesse. The minimum acre size is 5 acres for a parcel, but a large-scale system can be the array itself can be up to 20 acres. So this is a rather smaller one.
very
Oh,
good.
And I'm sorry, just one thing, Attorney Hoppick.
Sure.
And just looking at the Article 16 conditional use permit, it addresses height, setbacks, visual buffer, lot coverage, noise and glare, environmental issues, security, landscaping, all of that stuff.
Well, going back to Attorney Teller's question before, you don't expect any landscaping issues with this project, right? You're gonna leave it flat?
It couldn't be flatter.
Okay. Very good. If there are no other questions, we'll close the public hearing and proceed to deliberate. I guess what we ought to do is take up number 04 first and address those issues, and then go to the setback case, which is 05. Well, I certainly agree that the application is not contrary to the public interest for all the reasons Jason explained, including as expressed in the letter of intent and the public purpose for which it's trying to accomplish, and in the manner it's trying to accomplish in a green manner. I can't find my letter of intent here, my copy of it, but it's in here somewhere. Here it is. And I guess the fact that the city council has acted on this in some fashion means something in terms of public interest.
Page,
Oh, yeah, the problem is I've already rearranged it so many times that they're all out of order anyway, so. But I found it, though, thank you. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, I agree that this type of solar array is of benefit to the city, so it's certainly in the public interest. I'm a little more concerned, and maybe somebody can convince me, that it observes the spirit of the ordinance.
Well, it's in the conservation district, right? There's no, we just, right, so there are 3 uses allowed, and Jason named them before: cemetery, conservation, and telecommunications. That's a rather restricted batch, And for a cemetery, this is an interesting alternate use for a piece of cemetery land that's, can't be used for cemetery land. And I never imagined that you couldn't use any land, you know, for a cemetery, you could use anything, I always thought, but I guess not. But, keeping in mind that the limited availability of use here, and what we heard about it not being a danger to public health, safety, or welfare, we heard about the glare reduction, there's no noise, there's no pollution, minimal maintenance. I believe all that to be true. The height of these things is low enough that the, I don't remember what the garages are on the left. I don't know what they're called now. The what? The carports, thank you. Between the trees and the carports, you could be standing to the left of these carports, and you wouldn't even know it was over there to the right. You wouldn't even know they were there, so, I mean, if you didn't know it in advance. And I don't think anybody's gonna be able to see in that. There's no, and like I said, there's no glare, there's nothing that would disturb anybody's quiet or create a nuisance of any kind to any of the neighbors. And I think one of the neighbors, Cedar Crest, wants to get involved with this in some fashion, so maybe that's a good way to get energy for them. I don't know. But I don't think it's not gonna change or affect the character of the neighborhood. I mean, it's hard to describe a neighborhood that's mostly a cemetery and apartments that are screened off anyway, so I just don't think it's gonna be a danger of any kind, and it's not gonna affect the spirit of the ordinance.
Well, I think that this is another case, and maybe I'm thinking too much of the hardship side, but I think this is another case where, you know, the character of the neighborhood doesn't match the zoning ordinance and the permitted uses. And, I mean, we've seen that this evening
Right.
more than once. So, I guess I'm just trying to,
Well, I guess
Process through
it's
it.
not hard to figure out why they zone this the conservation district. That cemetery's been there for a long time, more than 50 years. So it's there, they zoned it that way, and this piece of it got caught up in it, and there's only 3 things you can do there. Be a cemetery, be a conservation area, or be a telecommunications site. So, yes. We can hear you okay. Oh, Corinne's got one for you.
Well, thank you. To go to Attorney Taylor's point on meeting the spirit of the ordinance, I got comfortable with that, with the passive nature of this activity. And I think it was mentioned by the applicant as well, that, you know, try to correlate solar and a telecommunication facility are relatively passive. Certainly the cemetery is, and conservation land in general is passive. So that's how I got comfortable with that, if that helps.
And all those things being passive, I guess sort of by definition, you don't disrupt or alter the character of the neighborhood.
Agreed.
Okay, I agree with that. Does anybody see any issue with the substantial justice prong? I mean, as I see it, the benefit to the public stands to gain significantly from this project, should it succeed. Attorney Taylor.
and in some ways, the owner and the public are one and the same.
Well, that's a good point, which I'm still scratching my head over, but that doesn't seem like a criteria that gives us a lot of heartburn. I would say the same about the diminution of property, surrounding properties. I don't see anything that gives us trouble there. Does anybody else? And I have to agree with the applicant's counsel that the limited nature of permitted uses in this area does create a special condition. So I'm inclined to say that that's a special condition that would allow us to say, and going back to the passive nature of the use, the application of the ordinance to this land for this use doesn't make sense. Yes.
And the point that I believe the applicant's attorney made, that, if I wrote this down correctly, that denying the variance would not further the purposes of the ordinance. And I think that that is what I was really kind of concerned about earlier when I was talking about spirit. And I think that's true, because there doesn't seem to be much relationship between the way that this property, as you mentioned, the way this property is zoned and what you can do with it.
And just looking at this one aerial photo, page 75 of 147, you can see that that's a sizable piece, and, sorry about that, and Jason mentioned that this would be on the lower side of a large solar array, but be that as it may, it's still a big chunk of land that you can't use it for a cemetery, you can't use it for the other things, or nobody wants to use it for the other things. It doesn't make sense to make it conservation land because of what's underneath it. So it makes sense to use it for something that's productive, that's passive and quiet and non-polluting. Does anybody want to make a motion to address 04? This is 04, isn't it? Yes, 04. Just the use.
I can attempt, I've never made the motion before, but
Attempt away.
after Jane's eloquent example, I'll try. I'll make a motion to approve Z.B.A. 2024-04, the petitioner Revision Energy, Inc. of 7A Commercial Drive, Brentwood, requests a variance for property located on 521 Park Ave, tax map 227-027-000, is in the Conservation District and is owned by the City of Keene. Petitioner requests a variance to permit the installation of a large-scale solar energy system on undeveloped land in the Conservation District per Article 7.3.5 of the zoning regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you like to consider any conditions on, oh, excuse me, I apologize. Wrong variance. I was thinking of the setbacks.
Maybe the setback one, but not.
Yeah, sorry.
Good idea, but a little too soon.
Yeah, a little too soon.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been seconded by Attorney Taylor. All right, we'll go through the criteria. Get my eyes on. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Does everybody agree? That's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. That's unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. That's unanimous. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in an unnecessary hardship because there is no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor? That's unanimous. And on the main motion to approve, you approve? Oh, that's unanimous. All right, so 04 is approved. 2024-04. Turning to 2024-05. I just want to make sure we have these, on the west side, it's no more than 25 feet from the boundary line, right? The array would be no closer than 25 feet to the boundary. And on the north side, it's no closer than 20, correct? Is it? Is that what everybody else has? All right. We're not worrying about the other sides, because there's not a room. All right.
Can I just say one clarifying thing?
Sure.
Just want to make sure that that has nothing to do with the fence, and that's just the array.
We heard before, I think, that the fence is not a structure,
For purposes of zoning.
right? How much of a mess are we going to create if we screw this up?
No, and again, just to clarify, it clearly states under the exemption that it's, that fences are exempt from zoning setbacks.
Okay.
Right in the ordinance.
All right,
If I could interject, Tara Kessler, BCM Planning or BCM Environmental Planning and Land Law. I just want to clarify that it's the edge of the solar panel and not the array. The ordinance defines solar footprint to include the perimeter fence around the array. And so just in case, just to be really clear, that the measurement is from the setback to the edge of the solar panels, not the array itself, because the definition of solar footprint includes the fence around the array. Just wanting that to be perfectly clear. Thank you.
got it. All right, so we have a question of two areas where they're looking for a 50-foot setback variance. But that's going to be covered in one variance, even though it's two areas.
It covers the overall section of that.
Okay. Well, I guess a lot of the analysis overlaps with 04 in terms of the public interest because of the space they have available to them in this area. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, I think, though, that what we have to consider here is, at least on the west side, you know, you've got the existence of the buffer of the trees and the carport on the adjacent property, and on the, I'm gonna get my directions confused at this stage.
North side is Cedar
And-
Crest.
And on the north side, there's going to be vegetation, or maybe there is, I'm not sure if it currently exists. But I think that that goes to whether or not it's in the public interest, in that, you know, by one token, if we've approved that that the solar array are in the public interest, then we have to sort of go, well, is putting them that close to the property line within the setback in the public interest? And I would say because of the aspect of the surrounding properties, that there'll be no negative impact, and it would be in the public interest.
Because it supports the overall project.
Right.
Right, okay. I agree with that. And I guess for the same reasons mentioned before, there's no, putting the setback or putting those structures within that distance on the west side, 25 feet, and on the north side, 20 feet, does not create a public health, safety, or welfare issue or alter the essential characteristics of the neighborhood. I don't see any property diminution issues there either. Yes.
And again, on the substantial justice, as I said, the applicant and the property owner are one and the same, but by the same token, if you're gonna look at the general public, there's definitely going to be a benefit to the general public, as well as the property owner.
Correct. special conditions here may be a little different, although I don't think they need to be. You do have that array of buffers, the garages and the trees and things like that, that justify a further encroachment, or not for further than 50 feet, let's say, not the 20 or the 25 that we're talking about. So I do believe those are some special conditions at this property that do distinguish it. Yes.
Usually when I'm looking at a setback violation, for want of a better phrase, I look at, is there any other reasonable location that would avoid an incursion into the setback? And I think we've heard a good deal of evidence that there is no practical way to site the solar array without going into the setback. So that in and of itself, I think, creates a hardship.
Yep. Anybody want anything more? I will move then to approve 2024-05 petitioner Revision Energy of Brentwood, New Hampshire, their request for a variance for property located at 521 Park Avenue, tax map 227-027-000, in the Conservation District owned by the City of Keene, for a variance to permit the installation of a large-scale solar energy system within the 50-foot setback required in the Conservation District, and for a large-scale solar energy system in the Solar Energy System Ordinance per Article 7.3.5 and 16.2.3 of the zoning ordinance, on the following conditions: that on the west side, that the setback be encroached no more than 25 feet from the edge of the solar panel, and on the north side, no closer than 20 feet from the edge of the solar panel. Is that right? Is that right? Right, okay. Those are the two conditions.
I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Clough seconds that. And let's have some discussion on the criteria. Or, we did, right? We're gonna vote on the criteria, sorry. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those agree with that? It's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. That's unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. That's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. Unanimous. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in an unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor of that finding? That's unanimous. And on the main motion, subject to the two conditions mentioned, all those in favor? That's unanimous. All right.
Thank you.
The city got what it doesn't need. Right. Is that what the arrangement is, you think? I couldn't tell.
I suspect it is because it was for some of the
Yep.
raised, they're going to own it after X number of years.
Right, after they do the investment.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any serious objection to tabling the rules of procedure updates and fee schedules proposals for next time, or do you want to tackle that now?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
You may,
As,
please.
as we know, we will have 5 applications first off on the agenda, and we haven't come to the deadline yet for the May meeting. So that may very well be a late evening at that time as well.
Oh, so what are you saying, bring our sleeping bags?
And also, if you remember, Evan Clemens last month, our planner who was here in my absence, he stated that the fee change is part of a larger and overall, as well as the rules of procedure changes specifically for notifying abutters, is part of a larger ordinance update that we are hoping to have collectively with the other regulatory boards as well.
So that's a nice way of saying we should do this, take care of it. I get it, okay. Attorney Taylor?
So I have a question then, because frankly, I did not have time to go line for line to see what had changed in this latest iteration. But after our discussions that we had last month, sorry about that, I think that we basically were in agreement with all of the, I'm trying to find it.
The fee schedule you're talking about?
No, with the language in the rules of procedure. I don't think we had any problem with the fee, but here it is. We had a lengthy discussion on Roman 3C, on the notice of decisions, and
That is
then
correct.
there is revised language at the end of that section.
That is
It's
correct.
underlined instead of highlighted. I'm fine with that. Are there any other changes that we did not review last month?
No, I was the only change,
That
that
was
was
the
from
only
a
change.
discussion, yes.
Okay. In that case, I don't have any problem with voting to approve these, and
All right, so let's take up the rules of procedure first.
yeah. So I move that we approve the changes to the zoning board of adjustment rules of procedure as presented.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded by Mr. Guyette and Attorney Taylor. I'm fine with that. Does anybody want to discuss this, or are you ready to vote on it? You're up to, all those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous, the rules of procedure are approved, or the amended rules of procedure as presented. So I guess the next item, Corinne, is the fee changes.
That was included in that.
Oh, it is in here?
Under that section,
All
yeah.
right.
Yes.
Was the 250.
Well, I thought we had to vote on the chart.
No, that was
separately.
E.
E, all right.
That was under section E of your rules of procedure.
Then we're all set.
Was that the only fee change?
The other, I believe it was, again, discussed with Evan last month, is that the department is proposing, staff is proposing to move away from certified mail and move to certificate of mail, which will be a decrease, but that's based on USPS rates. The only fee change would be the fee for the application, from $100 to $250.
Okay, so there are no, excuse me, no other additional fees.
We're proposing to remain, to keep the legal notice fee of $62, remain that as it is.
And that's because you're thinking we'll save money on this new alternative way of a certificate of mailing. I think that's what you called it, right?
Right, it's a certificate of mailing. We have, in doing some research with the fee schedule with other municipalities. We were shared their versions of their legal fees, which covers the basic information that we need to provide to the public,
Yep,
which has reduced, it has actually kept more in line with our fee for the legal notice currently. So it's our changes internally
Gotcha.
have kept the fees relatively in line with what we charge currently. The fee from the Sentinel, from the newspaper.
okay.
Yeah, I seem to recall that the last time we looked at the fees, you had revised the content, I guess is the best way, of the legal advertising, which cut down on the bulk, shall we say?
That is correct, yes.
Is there anything else? Then we should be adjourned. Well done, everybody. It's only 9:30.